On the wall, a live feed from the Strait of Hormuz. 9 ships waiting. 9 ships that aren't moving. This is night 9. It's just 9 consecutive nights of American strikes on Iranian territory. Not February, not March. Now, this week. And while missiles fly, something quieter is happening 2,000 miles away in a hotel conference room in Doha. 2 delegations, not speaking to each other directly, speaking through a third country in a language of silence and paper. That's where this story actually starts. Signal number 1, 5 months ago, this war wasn't supposed to still be happening. On February 28th, 2026, the United States and Israel launched coordinated airstrikes on Iran's nuclear and missile infrastructure. The stated goal was blunt, cripple the program, and force regime change. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was killed in those strikes. Think about that for a second. Not a general, not a minister. The man who had sat at the top of the Islamic Republic for over 3 decades, gone in an air campaign. His successor, his nephew, Mojtaba Khamenei, was installed almost immediately. Iran didn't fold. It hit back. American bases across the region, targets inside Israel, and sites in neighboring states. Hezbollah opened a second front from Lebanon. Israel responded with ground operations. For weeks, the region was an open war. Then, on April 8th, something shifted. Pakistan, not usually the country you'd expect at the center of this, brokered a 2-week pause between Washington and Tehran. It held, barely. But it held long enough for both sides to do something unusual: talk. By June 17th, American and Iranian officials had signed a 14-point memorandum of understanding. 60 days, a framework, a ceasefire with an expiration date built into it. On the table, the future of the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's frozen billions in overseas assets, sanctions relief, and the nuclear program that started this entire war. Here's what nobody was telling you back in June. That memorandum was never really a peace deal. It was a countdown clock disguised as a diplomatic win. For a moment, it looked like it might actually work. In Switzerland, at a luxury hotel complex on Lake Lucerne, American Vice President J.D. Vance told reporters Iran had agreed to let IAEA inspectors back into the country. He called it a milestone, the first real step toward ending Iran's nuclear weapons capability for good. Qatar and Pakistan, the 2 mediators keeping this fragile thing alive, said both sides had agreed on a roadmap toward a final deal within 60 days. 60 days. Mark that number. It matters later. But here's the catch. Memorandums of understanding aren't peace treaties. They're promises. And promises breathe air, but they don't stop bullets. Within 2 weeks, new fault lines were already cracking open. Ships moving through the Strait of Hormuz. One of the most fought over patches of water on Earth, the channel that carries roughly 1/5 of the entire world's oil supply, became targets again. The United States accused Iran of obstructing traffic. Iran accused the United States of violating the ceasefire with new strikes. Both sides were technically right. By early July, American envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner were shuttling in and out of Doha, meeting with Qatar's prime minister, trying to drag the 2 governments back to a table neither wanted to fully sit at. Indirect talks. That's the phrase that keeps showing up. Indirect. American officials in one room, Iranian officials in another, Qatari and Pakistani mediators walking documents and demands between the 2, like couriers moving live ammunition. Iran's negotiating team was led by Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Garibabadi. Notably absent, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the 2 men with the most authority to actually sign something. When the people with real authority stop showing up to their own negotiations, that's not a technical delay, that's a message. And the message got louder fast. Vice President Vance, the administration's lead negotiator, said something on a podcast in mid-July that deserves more attention than it got. He said you can bomb Iran's radar, you can destroy its drones, you can take out its missile stockpiles, but you cannot bomb your way into controlling a 100-mile-wide strait. It's just too easy to fire at ships, he said. You've got to actually be willing to talk. That's the American vice president in public, admitting the strikes alone were never going to be enough. Which brings us to the third person in the room nobody wants to name out loud. The one factor that can blow up any deal on paper before the ink is even dry. The hardliners. On one side, voices inside the Israeli government pushing for total permanent destruction of Iran's capability to rebuild. Not a pause, not an inspection regime, an ending. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz was reported saying Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, was marked for death. Read that again, not the old supreme leader. The new one. The one installed after the last one was killed in a strike. On the other side, elements of Iran's own hardline security establishment, who see any negotiation as surrender and every American gesture, even the IAEA inspections framework, even the roadmap, as a trap designed to disarm Iran permanently while giving nothing real in return. Both sets of hardliners want the same outcome. No deal. Just for opposite reasons. Every time Doha makes progress, someone on one of these two sides finds a way to blow it up. A strike, a leaked threat, a drone downed over Iraq. And here's the domino effect that turns a regional standoff into something that shows up in your grocery bill. If the Strait of Hormuz stays choked, even partially, oil doesn't stay where it is. As of this week, Brent crude is sitting around $91 a barrel, up roughly 3% in a matter of days. U.S. crude is close behind, near $85. Traffic through the strait has fallen to about 2/3 of what it was before the war, roughly 14 million barrels a day instead of the normal flow. Some tankers are rerouting along the Omani coastline, a path Tehran doesn't recognize as legitimate, which is its own kind of provocation. American gas prices are already ticking up, sitting just under $4 a gallon nationally, about a third higher than before this war began. If the strait closes further, not hypothetically, but as an actual extended shutdown, energy analysts have long warned oil could spike well past $100 a barrel. That kind of shock doesn't stay contained to gas stations. It moves through shipping costs, food prices, and eventually equity markets, because oil shocks are one of the fastest ways to drag global growth estimates down in a single quarter. That's the mechanism. Strait closes, oil spikes, inflation reaccelerates, markets reprice risk. It's not speculation, it's the same chain reaction that's played out in every major Hormuz disruption for the last 40 years. Now here's the human cost driving all of it, and it's the part getting the least airtime. Iran's health ministry says at least 50 people have been killed and more than 500 injured by American strikes just since July 6th. A bridge connecting Rudan and Bandar Abbas in the south of the country was hit. A desalination plant was struck, leaving roughly 10,000 people without water. On the American side, the Pentagon has confirmed the deaths of U.S. service members in Jordan and another killed in northern Iraq during the detonation of an unexploded Iranian drone. The total number of American service members killed since the war began in February has now reached 17. 17 families. 50 families, at minimum, on the other side. And that's just this month's toll layered on top of everything from February through June. President Trump, when pressed on how long this continues, compared it to Vietnam, pointing out the U.S. was in that war for 19 years and has been engaged with Iran for a fraction of that time. He said the strikes continue until I say it's enough. That's not a timeline. That's an open-ended commitment from the one person whose decision actually ends it or extends it. Meanwhile, an Iranian negotiator has now said publicly that the June memorandum, the 60-day roadmap, the framework everyone stood behind in Switzerland, is effectively suspended because of what Tehran calls American violations. Remember that 60-day countdown from earlier. It's still running, and right now it's running on a document one side has already declared dead. So where does that actually leave things tonight, on July 20th? Indirect channels are still technically open. Qatar and Pakistan haven't walked away. Vance himself, the man leading the American side, has said publicly that force alone can't finish this, which means somewhere inside the administration, there's an acknowledgement that talks have to restart in some form, even if nobody's ready to schedule the next round yet. At the same time, this is night 9 of active strikes, with no announced end date, a suspended memorandum, and hardliners on both sides who benefit politically from the deal collapsing entirely. The honest version of this story isn't a countdown clock to a single dramatic moment. It's two competing realities running at the same time. A war that's actively killing people every single night, and a negotiating channel that both sides keep insisting even now isn't completely dead. Whether the next headline out of Doha or Tehran is a resumed roadmap or another round of strikes depends less on any secret document and more on which voices win out this week. The negotiators still shuttling messages through Qatar, or the hardliners on both sides who've shown repeatedly that they can blow up progress with a single strike or a single leaked threat. That's the real binary here, not Hollywood. Not a ticking bomb with a red digital display, just a fragile channel of communication running alongside an active war with real casualties mounting on both sides every single night this continues. Whichever way it breaks, it won't be quiet. Watch the Strait, watch Doha, and watch what happens the next time someone with real authority, Aragchi, Ghalibaf, Witkoff, actually shows back up at the table.